We worked with our flight data quite a bit. Now let me add another kind of data. I'll clear the console with the CLS command for that. And now I'll add a passengers collection to my flights database. And I want to insert many passengers in there. Now you find a file attached to this video, the passengers JSON file, with an array of passenger data, just some dummy names and ages. Copy that and add it here, and add a closing parentheses at the end and hit enter. And this should insert many elements with the insert many command with all these automatically generated IDs. Now we can have a look at that data by accessing passengers, and you can always just type and then use tab autocompletion here, by the way. So simply hit tab in the shell and it should autocomplete. And you can find them and pretty print the results. There are our passengers. Now on first sight this might look good, but actually if you have a look at the last entry, Albert Twostone, and then you have a look at the data you found attached, you will see that Albert is not the last entry. Gordon Black actually is. Now the order here is the same order as it was added to the database. So where is Gordon? Well, you also see the type IT for more. If we type IT, then we see Gordon Black. Now this IT command is a feature shown in the shell. I will show you another way of getting the data if you were using a MongoDB driver in an application in a second. But the fact that we had to use that is not shell specific. Instead, find, so passengers, find, or the find command in general, no matter on which collection you use it, gives you back a cursor and not all the data. Previously, it looked like it always gives us back all the data, but actually it gives us a so-called cursor object. Now what is that? Find does not give us an array of all the documents in a collection. And that makes a lot of sense because that collection could be very big. And if find would immediately send us back all documents, and you think about a collection with, let's say, 20 million documents, then this would take super long, but most importantly, it would send a lot of data over the wire. So instead of that, it gives us back a cursor object, which is an object with a lot of metadata behind it that allows us to cycle through the results. And that is what that IT command did. It basically used that cursor to fetch the next bunch of data. So find here really just gives us back that cursor. And we can actually see that by using some other methods here. For example, there is toArray. If you execute this, now you see Gordon Black as the last element, and now there is no type IT to see more, because toArray will actually go ahead and exhaust the cursor, so go through the entire list and fetch all the documents and not stop after the first 20, which by the way is simply a feature by the MongoDB shell. It gives you the first 20 documents automatically, but then stops. toArray simply gets them all and gives you an array. Now that might be fine here, but of course that is also not optimal if you got a lot of elements. In your application code, you would most likely use something like passengers, find, and then there is a for each method. And for each here simply allows you to write some code to do something on every element that is in your database, on every document you got in there. Now, the exact syntax you can use is something you can find in the driver docs for your driver. So if you're using PHP, check out the PHP MongoDB driver docs and you will see how to use that for each function. In JavaScript, and the shell is based on JavaScript, you could pass a JavaScript function to it using an arrow function here, where you will get an argument passed into the function automatically, and that will be your document. You can name this argument however you want. So in our case, it will be our passenger data. And then you can use it in here. And here in the shell, there is a print JSON command, which we can use to pass or to, pass our JSON data, which we want to output, like passenger data. And now we also get all the documents, because now what we're doing is on the cursor, which find does return, we execute the built-in for each method to execute this method here, this anonymous method, on every element. And the cursor will simply go through our entire collection, fetch all documents one at a time, execute that function on it, pass the document into the function, and then here we just happen to print it out like this in your application with your favorite language. You can of course do to the data whatever you want to do. Render it onto an HTML page, send it with an HTTP request, whatever you need to do. And that is just what I want you to take away from this lecture. Find does not by default give you all the documents, even though it looked like it did, because the shell actually gives you the first 20 documents by default. Instead, find gives you a cursor, and then it's up to you to use that cursor with toArray to force it to get all documents and put them into an array, or better, for large sets of documents, with forEach. And there are more methods available, which you find in your driver docs. Technically, you need to know that with forEach, it will really just fetch the next document for every loop cycle. So this is very efficient here because it does not fetch all the data in advance, load it into memory, and then force you to go through it with forEach. Instead, it really just fetches the data on demand, therefore, of course, not overusing your bandwidth and not loading too much into memory. So this is the important thing to take away. Find gives you a cursor and not the element itself. This also is the reason why on find1 we could not use pretty. You remember, if I use passengers, find1, this works. Find1 pretty fails, because pretty is a method that simply exists on the cursor here. So this is why find1 does not support it, because find1 does not give us a cursor, because it only gives us one document anyways. Find gives us multiple documents, therefore we don't get the data immediately, we get the cursor instead. The shell happens to take that cursor and give us the first 20 documents by default, but we can also control it with forEach or toArray, and here pretty exists because it is simply a method that exists on the cursor to pretty print the output. This is what you need to take away here. For the other methods like insert, update, and delete, cursors do not exist because these methods don't fetch data. They manipulate it instead.